Hey guys, so this video is going to be about my Nclex experience. Basically, I'm going to touch up on what I used to prepare for Nclex. I'm going to talk about my experience going into the test, and I'm also going to talk to you guys about tips and tricks to help calm the nerves, or whatever the case may be. If this is your predicament, if you are a graduate nurse, congratulations by the way, and you are preparing yourself to take Nclex. So I recently took my test and I am here to talk to you guys about my experience. So first and foremost, the only platform or resource rather that I used to prepare myself for the Nclex RN was UWorld. And I went to a school that was heavy on Kaplan, and we did this Kaplan review course at the end of our semester. It was like a 3-day course, and mind you, I'm doing this during COVID, so everything was online. Normally the course would be in person, but it was online. And our school was really stressing, like our director of nursing, our professors were really stressing for us to use Kaplan as our resource. However, after a lot of research, I decided to use UWorld as my resource. And I'm gonna be honest with you, UWorld was actually the only resource that I used just by itself. Also, disclaimer, please excuse my room. I know that my bed is not made, and this is specifically because it's laundry day, so my sheets are in the wash. But all right, let's get back to the video. Yeah, so I only use UWorld. I used about 1,300 questions. When I went to go test, I had about 600 questions left in my test bank. I don't know how much UWorld will allow us to show. I don't want to be copyrighted or anything, but I would score in the 50s and 60s, and I would also get some 40s sometimes in there, but my average was in the 50s and 60s. I took my assessment test, the self-evaluation exam. I only had one because I bought the 60-day plan from UWorld. I took my self-assessment 2 days before my exam, and I scored a 55, which put me borderline. And when I finished, I was like really confused because I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, what does this mean? You know, like borderline, like, you know, like this doesn't tell me anything, because when you score borderline on your UWorld assessment, it basically, they don't have enough information to let you know whether or not you are bound to fail or pass. But I just want to let everybody know, based off of my experience, that you don't really want to use UWorld as a like an indicator on how well you're doing in Nclex. Rather, it's more so of a resource to use just to study. That's all it is just basically for you to see how much knowledge you have, and then everything else that you didn't particularly get right is a learner for you, so you could literally just learn from it. And that's what I did, because I'm not gonna lie, the first few tests that I was taking, I was really getting really down on myself, because I was like, oh my goodness, like whenever I would score like a low 50, I would be like, oh my goodness, like I'm not gonna do well, like why am I not scoring high enough? But 56 actually is the average that UWorld tells their users that they should average about, and you should be pretty much okay. I didn't even average that. When I finished, I think I was at a 52 percentile. Yeah, I was at the 52nd percentile, and 55 on my self-exam with a borderline pass. So these are, I'm not going to show anything on UWorld because I am afraid to be copyrighted or anything, but here I'm just looking at some of my scores, and I'm looking at the 600 questions that I have left that I didn't do. So what I did was, in the beginning, I gave myself a 30-day test. So I did a 30-day plan for myself. Okay, so I want to let you guys know that I actually graduated in August of 2020, this year, unless you're watching this like years later. But I graduated August 21st of 2020. And since I recently got married, I literally have been in school for about the same amount of time that I met my husband. So he's only ever known me as a nursing student. I really haven't been able to do anything with him, like go out of town and stuff, since we've been dating, which turned into an engagement, which turned into a wedding, which turned into us being married. So, I got married while I was in school. I was literally in my last semester, like finished with my last semester when I did it. I'm not crazy. I literally got married like my last semester. Like I had no more classes left. I was just doing my preceptorship when I got married. But because of that was the reason why I decided to take September off. So I graduated in August. I took the whole month of September off just to enjoy my marriage. Me and my husband, we actually went to go visit my sister in Detroit. So we took a little flight to Detroit and had a little, mini vacation there with my sister and her husband. And I just like really wanted to just hang out with my husband, like get to know him as a husband, and not as a boyfriend. Like this is a new life. I just wanted to do more than I was doing, because being a nursing student is all you really can be. I promise you, anyone who is a nurse who went to nursing school will tell you that when you get into nursing school, all you are is a nursing student. Like you're really fighting to fulfill other roles in your life. But if you are really taking this seriously, every nursing student can tell you that it takes over your life. So I took the month of September off, and then I started to get serious in October. So it was the beginning of October. I think it was October 1st. And at that point, some of my classmates had already passed their boards and gotten jobs. And so I was like, okay, well, if they can do it, I can too. So after my little break was over, I purchased UWorld, and I put myself on a 30-day boot camp. And literally it's nothing other than my own little agenda of how I was going to study for Nclex. So UWorld gives you about 2,000, if I'm not mistaken, about 2,200, 2,100 questions. And I knew that if I did at least 75 to 100 questions a day, I could get through the test bank. So I was gauging how much questions I would, do a day. And this would include, of course, me going over the questions and really studying the rationales, because really that's all it's about. It's about those rationales, and the UWorld's rationales, they are so thorough. Like that's what made me fall in love with it, honestly, because it had a demo in the beginning. Like you can do this little demo with 25 questions, and literally I did like a couple, and I was like, I really like this platform, I really do. So I did. If you want, I can actually do another video if you want on like more detail of how I worked through every single day and how I did my questions, what I did my questions on, if you'd like. But just, long story short, I did about 75 questions a day. And then as time progressed, I started to do 150 questions a day. And then I want to say when I got to like the really end, like when I started getting to the long stretch where I was approaching like my test day, I pushed it back down to 75. And that was just because I didn't want to overwhelm myself, with that many questions a day, especially because the test was coming so soon. So that's what I did for my 30-day. I worked all through October and the beginning of November to do this. And I scheduled my test for November. November 10th, that's when I took my exam. I literally didn't feel like I was 100% confident, because this is only because up until a couple days before Nclex, I was doing it wrong. I was using UWorld as oh my goodness, like, I'm not even scoring 56, like I just got a 54 or 55, or I'll score a 60, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I should be getting higher than this. I was literally panicking based off of my scores, which was a no. And this literally ate away at my confidence before the exam. So for anyone who's about to use UWorld, I want to let you know right now that I know I said this already, but use it so you can learn. Please do not use this as oh my goodness, I'm not doing well on these exams, I'm never going to be ready for Nclex. Please don't do that. So after my 30 days was up, There were some days I took off for myself, like there were a couple weekends where I was just too overwhelmed, and I would literally just take the weekend off and meditate and just. So by the time my test date came, I still had about 600 questions left on my test bank, and I actually heard other YouTubers who, said that they also had a couple questions left in their test bank, so I wasn't freaking out about that. So after that, my test date was coming, and I took my the self-assessment 2 days before. It said I was borderline, and honestly, I tried not to panic. As the time approached, I actually started to get less and less anxious. The most anxious I was about taking the test was a week before, because the week before, exactly 1 week before my exam, I had taken the weekend off, and I had taken some time to be with family and my husband, and I was just like, I was just too overwhelmed with all the studying, and I was like, I'm gonna take this weekend. Taking that weekend off actually made me feel like I was, I fell off, because I took Saturday and Sunday, and it literally made me feel like I was behind. I was like panicking. So that was the last time I actually felt really, really, really anxious, was, that Monday. But Tuesday, I just literally was like, okay, let's get yourself together, do some meditation, let's do some breathing, and let's get back on it. And I just kept on going, and I was not anxious even leading up the day before my exam. Oh, by the way, I just want to let you know, a lot of people say do not study the day before the exam, and I agree, but unfortunately for me, I gave in, and I did some studying the day before the exam. 2 days before, I did a self-assessment, and then the day before, I literally use that time to go through all my incorrect questions and to redo them again. And I do not recommend this, by the way, because even though I scored pretty high, and the ones that I didn't score as high in, I'm like, how do I know? I remember 86% of the information on this exam, but on this one I only remember X amount of percent, and it really made me a little, like, I started to doubt myself. So I do not recommend studying the day before the exam. It was so horrible, and I was so angry at myself for doing it. But anyways, so the day of the exam, my husband actually took off from work so that he can take me to the testing center, and I really appreciate that very much. And if you can have somebody come with you, that would be great, because if you're anything like me, I'm a freaking anxiety. Like, I'm so anxious. Like, I'm anxious about everything. So now imagine a test like Nclex. So I really needed somebody with me that day, and my husband took off from work so that he could be with me, and I appreciated that a lot. Before I get into the actual day and how everything started off and how I felt, my testing experience, I just want to give some tips and tricks. And it's not really tips and tricks, it's just stuff that you already know. So I already gave you guys the indicator not to study the day before, because you're gonna literally panic. You're gonna literally panic if you're not doing as well as you thought. Another thing is, if you can have someone take you to the testing center, that'd be great, because if you're really anxious like me, you might not want to drive, feeling the way you do, and especially after, when you don't know what your results are, because your results, it takes 48 hours before you can get your quick results, and not every state has it, but I'm going to get into that later. Another thing that I would recommend is using, of course, like, I'm just kind of going over, like, these are my objectives, okay? Another thing I would recommend is the things that I already said, but I just want to really reiterate them. Using UWorld as a learning platform rather than an indicator of how well you're going to do on the test. Because there's so much information that you can get from UWorld. And if you do enough questions, like if you're really diligent and you're just doing your questions and getting the most from your rationales, I'm telling you, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. Like, read those rationales. Whether you get the question right or whether you get it wrong, read them. So these are some tips, basically. And then for anxiety, besides bringing someone with you to the testing center, think about it. Like, think about the test. You ever heard of wishful thinking? Once you wish, you can wish something into existence. Like, think about it. Think about you leaving that testing center and knowing that you passed. Like, literally envision yourself as a nurse. Like, these are things that I literally did to help calm my nerves. Another thing that I did was like give yourself pep talks, like you can do this, you know. If you want, you can actually write down on a note card everything that you are, like you're smart, you're this, you're that. And if you actually keep on reading it back to yourself, like you actually will believe these things, and they are true. That's the crazy thing about it. This is true. If you've gotten this far, you're not stupid. Nursing school is tough. For you to be able to be a graduate nurse, you're smart. Do not doubt yourself. So these are things that you can do for yourself to help your anxiety if you're anything like me. And then I'm going to get into my testing experience, how the test day went.